I watched through my security camera as Karen raised the bolt cutters above my brand new pool gate lock, the same lock she had forced me to buy just 2 weeks earlier, the same lock that cost me $300 to keep her happy. She snipped through the metal like it was paper. Then she opened my gate and waved in a dozen people I had never seen before. They brought coolers, pool floats, and speakers. They were about to throw a pool party in my backyard without my permission. But what Corinne did not know was that I had been preparing for this moment. What she did not know was that my crystal clear pool water was hiding a secret that would change everything. What she did not know was that, in just a few hours, she would be wearing the evidence of her crime for everyone in the neighborhood to see. That was the day Corinne learned that some mistakes leave permanent stains. My name is Michael, and I spent 3 years of my life planning the perfect backyard pool. 3 years of saving every extra dollar, working overtime shifts, and dreaming about the day I could finally dive into my own piece of paradise. I am not a wealthy man. I work as a maintenance supervisor at a local factory. Every dollar that went into this pool came from months of careful budgeting and sacrifice. While my friends went out for dinner and took weekend trips, I stayed home and added money to my pool fund. My wife Sarah supported me through every step, even when it meant eating generic brand cereal for breakfast and skipping our annual vacation. The construction process took 8 months from start to finish. I pulled every permit myself, researched every contractor, and supervised every step of the installation. This was not just a pool. This was my masterpiece. The finished product was everything I had dreamed about and more. The pool measured 20 feet by 40 feet with a beautiful curved deep end that went down to 8 feet. I had installed LED lighting that could change colors with a remote control. The deck was made from premium composite materials that stayed cool even in the summer heat. I had built-in speakers that connected to my phone, and a small outdoor refrigerator stocked with cold drinks. Every morning before work, I would swim 20 laps in the crystal clear water. Every evening after my long shifts, I would float on my back and watch the sunset reflect off the surface. Those moments made every sacrifice worth it. This pool was not just recreation. It was proof that hard work and determination could make dreams come true. My neighborhood was governed by a homeowners association called Meadowbrook HOA. The president was a woman named Karen Mitchell, who lived 4 streets over in one of the larger houses. During the construction process, Karen had been surprisingly supportive. She would stop by every few weeks to check on the progress and ask questions about the installation. Karen was in her early 50s with perfectly styled blonde hair and the kind of smile that never quite reached her eyes. She always carried a clipboard and spoke with the authority of someone who was used to being in charge. She complimented my choice of materials and said the pool would be a wonderful addition to the neighborhood property values. For the first month after completion, everything was perfect. I had found my rhythm of morning swims and evening relaxation. Sarah and I would grill dinner on our new patio and eat while watching the pool lights dance on the water. Neighbors would walk by and compliment the beautiful installation. I felt proud, accomplished, and grateful. But then Corinne started visiting more frequently. She would appear at my back gate during the evenings when I was trying to relax. She would ask detailed questions about my maintenance schedule, how often I used the pool, and whether I had considered sharing access with other neighborhood families. At first, I answered her questions politely. I explained that I cleaned the pool every other day, that I swam most mornings and evenings, and that occasionally we had friends over for barbecues. I thought she was just being friendly and making conversation. But her questions became more specific and frequent. She wanted to know exactly what chemicals I used, how much my electric bill had increased, and whether I had installed the proper safety equipment according to HOA standards. She started taking notes on her clipboard during these conversations. Something about her tone began to make me uncomfortable, but I could not put my finger on exactly what was wrong. This was Karen being Karen, I told myself. She was just thorough and detail-oriented. After all, she was responsible for maintaining neighborhood standards. I had no idea that Karen was already planning something that would shatter my perfect paradise forever. 3 weeks after my pool was finished, Karen arrived at my front door with a thick folder of documents and her usual clipboard. She was wearing a business suit even though it was Saturday morning, and her expression was more serious than I had ever seen it. She said she needed to discuss some important HOA compliance issues regarding my pool installation. My heart sank. After all the permits and inspections, I thought I had covered every possible requirement. Karen sat at my kitchen table and opened her folder to reveal pages of highlighted text from the HOA bylaws. She pointed to Section 12.7, which dealt with pool safety requirements. According to her interpretation, any pool in our neighborhood needed to have a specific type of locking mechanism on the gate to meet insurance requirements. The lock she described was not just any ordinary pool gate lock. It had to be a commercial-grade security lock that met certain specifications. She showed me a catalog with the approved models, and my eyes widened when I saw the prices. The cheapest option cost $280. I protested that I already had a perfectly good lock on my pool gate. The contractor had installed a heavy-duty padlock that seemed more than adequate for keeping children safe. But Karen shook her head and tapped her pen on the bylaw text. She explained that the HOA had recently updated their insurance policy, and all pools needed to meet the new safety standards within 30 days. If I failed to comply, I would face daily fines of $50 until the violation was corrected. She handed me a formal notice with my name and address typed at the top. I felt frustrated and trapped, but I did not want to start a war with the HOA over a lock. I had worked too hard to build this pool to risk problems with the neighborhood association. I told Karen I would order the approved lock immediately. The next day, I drove to the specialty hardware store and purchased the most expensive lock I had ever bought in my life. The thing weighed 5 pounds and came with 4 different keys and a warranty card. Installing it required drilling new holes in my gate and reinforcing the latch mechanism. Karen returned the following week to conduct what she called a formal inspection. She tested the lock mechanism, measured the gate clearance, and checked that the keys worked properly. She grudgingly approved the installation and made notes on her clipboard. I felt relief wash over me as she signed off on the compliance form. The expensive lock was annoying, but at least now I could enjoy my pool without worrying about HOA violations. I thought my troubles with Karen were finally over. But within days of the lock installation, I started noticing strange things around my pool area. Small items would be moved from where I had left them. The pool skimmer would be in a different position than where I always stored it. The outdoor furniture cushions would be slightly askew, even though I was careful to arrange them neatly every evening. One morning, I found wet footprints on the pool deck even though it had not rained, and I had not used the pool the night before. The prints were clearly from bare feet and were much smaller than mine. Someone had been walking around my pool area while I was sleeping. I started checking the lock more carefully each morning. Sometimes it seemed like the mechanism had been tampered with, though the lock itself remained secure. The gate would be positioned slightly differently than how I remembered leaving it. My wife Sarah thought I was being paranoid, but my instincts told me something was wrong. Someone was accessing my property without permission, and the expensive new lock was not keeping them out. I decided it was time to find out exactly what was happening in my backyard when I was not watching. If someone was trespassing on my property, I needed proof. I needed evidence that would show me who was violating my privacy and why. The security cameras I ordered online would give me the answers I was looking for, but those answers would be more shocking than anything I could have imagined. I installed 4 wireless security cameras around my pool area on a Tuesday evening. 2 cameras covered the pool itself, one focused on the gate entrance, and one provided a wide view of the entire backyard. The cameras connected to an app on my phone that would send notifications whenever motion was detected. For 3 days, the cameras captured nothing unusual. I began to wonder if I had been imagining the signs of trespassing. Maybe the moved items and wet footprints had innocent explanations. Maybe my paranoia was getting the better of me. Then on Saturday afternoon, while I was at the grocery store with Sarah, my phone started buzzing with motion alerts. The first notification showed someone approaching my back gate. When I opened the app and saw who it was, my blood turned to ice. Karen stood at my pool gate wearing a tank top and shorts, carrying what looked like bolt cutters in her right hand. She was not alone. Behind her stood 3 other adults and 2 children, all carrying pool bags and coolers. I recognized one of the adults as Tom Henderson, another HOA board member who lived on the next street over. I watched in disbelief as Karen positioned the bolt cutters on my expensive lock, the same lock she had forced me to buy just 3 weeks earlier, the same lock she had personally inspected and approved. She cut through the metal shackle like it was made of paper. Karen opened my gate and waved the group into my backyard. They moved with the confidence of people who belonged there, spreading towels on my pool deck and setting up their coolers on my outdoor table. The children jumped into my pool immediately, while the adults settled into my lounge chairs. My hands were shaking as I scrolled through the camera feeds. Karen knew exactly where I stored my pool maintenance equipment. She retrieved my pool noodles from the storage shed and handed them to the children. She opened my outdoor refrigerator and distributed cold drinks to her friends. This was not random trespassing. This was a planned invasion of my property by someone who had studied my setup and prepared for this moment. Karen moved through my backyard like she owned it, directing the other adults to different areas and making herself completely at home. The footage showed them using my pool for over 3 hours. They played music through my outdoor speakers. They used my bathroom by entering through the sliding door that I never locked during the day. They helped themselves to food from my outdoor refrigerator and left trash scattered around my pool deck. But the worst part was watching Karen herself. She floated in my pool on one of my rafts, drink in hand, laughing and talking with her friends like she was the host of this pool party. She had turned my personal sanctuary into her private entertainment venue. When the group finally left, I watched them cut a new padlock from Karen's purse and attach it to my gate. They were not just trespassing. They were claiming ownership of my property and locking me out of my own backyard. The damage they left behind made my stomach sick. One of my pool lights had been cracked, probably from someone kicking it while swimming. My deck furniture had stains from wet bodies and spilled drinks. Empty bottles and food wrappers floated in my previously pristine pool water. But the physical damage was nothing compared to the emotional violation I felt. These people had invaded my most private space, the place where I found peace after long work days. They had stolen not just the use of my pool, but my sense of security and privacy. I saved every video file from that day and backed them up in multiple locations. The footage was crystal clear and showed every face clearly. Karen and her accomplices had no idea they were being recorded, and their casual attitude during the trespassing proved this was not their first time. As I sat in my living room that evening, staring at the evidence on my phone, I felt something change inside me. The shock and disbelief were hardening into cold anger. Karen had not just broken into my property. She had shattered my trust and violated my sanctuary. But she had also made a critical mistake. She had given me proof of her crimes in high-definition video. Now I had to decide what to do with that evidence. I could call the police, contact a lawyer, or confront Karen directly. What I did not realize was that Karen had been planning this violation for weeks, and she was not going to stop with just one unauthorized pool party. She thought she had outsmarted me completely. She had no idea that her biggest mistake was yet to come. Monday morning, I marched straight to Karen's house with my phone full of evidence and my patience completely gone. I rang her doorbell at 7:30 in the morning, before she could leave for work or come up with excuses. Karen answered the door in her bathrobe, looking annoyed at the early interruption. When she saw my face, her expression changed to something between surprise and guilt. She knew exactly why I was there. I held up my phone and pressed play on the security footage. Her face appeared on the screen, cutting through my lock with bolt cutters. I watched her eyes widen as she saw herself waving her friends into my backyard. "I have 3 hours of footage showing you and your friends trespassing on my property and using my pool without permission," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I want to know why you thought this was acceptable, and I want it to never happen again." Karen's response shocked me even more than her original crime. She straightened her shoulders, looked me in the eye, and denied everything. She claimed the footage must be fake or manipulated. She said I was harassing her and making false accusations. Then she delivered the line that made my blood boil. As HOA president, she claimed to have emergency access rights to any property in the neighborhood if there were safety or maintenance concerns. She said she had been checking my pool chemistry to ensure it met neighborhood standards. I stared at her in disbelief. She was not just lying about what the footage clearly showed. She was making up authority she did not have to justify criminal behavior. I told her that emergency access did not include bringing friends and family for pool parties, but she simply shrugged and said I was misunderstanding the situation. I left Karen's house and drove straight to the police station. I thought surely law enforcement would take trespassing seriously when I had clear video evidence of the crime. I was wrong. The desk sergeant barely looked at my phone when I tried to show him the footage. He said property disputes between neighbors were civil matters that the police could not get involved in. He suggested I contact a lawyer or try to work things out through the HOA. I explained that this was not a property dispute but clear criminal trespassing with video proof. The sergeant shrugged and said that unless someone was in immediate danger, neighbor conflicts had to be resolved through other channels. My lawyer consultation the next day was even more frustrating. The attorney confirmed that Karen had committed trespassing and possibly breaking and entering, but he explained that pursuing legal action would cost thousands of dollars and take months to resolve. Even if I won the case, the most likely outcome would be a small fine for Karen and a restraining order that would be difficult to enforce. The lawyer said my best bet was to install better security and try to resolve the issue through HOA channels. But when I tried to file a complaint with the HOA board, I discovered that Karen had already beaten me to it. She had filed paperwork claiming that I was harassing her, creating neighborhood discord, and making false accusations against HOA leadership. The board meeting was scheduled for the following Thursday. I prepared my evidence carefully, organizing the video footage and documenting the damage to my property. I thought surely reasonable people would see the truth when presented with clear evidence. I was wrong again. The HOA board consisted of 5 people, and 3 of them were clearly in Karen's corner before I even spoke. They listened politely to my presentation, but asked pointed questions about why I had installed cameras without notifying the HOA, and whether filming neighbors could be considered an invasion of privacy. When Karen spoke, she presented herself as the victim of my aggressive behavior. She claimed I had been hostile during her routine safety inspections and was now trying to intimidate her with surveillance and false accusations. She suggested that my behavior was creating problems for the entire neighborhood. The board voted 4-1 to issue me a formal warning for harassment and to require me to remove my security cameras within 10 days. They also imposed a $50 fine for non-compliance with camera installation notification requirements. I sat in that meeting room, staring at people who had just watched video evidence of Karen trespassing on my property, and realized that the system was completely rigged. Karen was not just stealing my pool access. She was using her position to make me the villain in my own victimization. That night I sat in my backyard and stared at my pool. The lock Karen had cut was still broken. The stains on my furniture were still visible. The crack in my pool light was still there, but somehow I was the one being punished. The legal system had failed me. The police had failed me. The HOA had failed me. If I wanted justice, I was going to have to create it myself. That weekend, I began researching something I had never thought about before in my life. I spent hours online looking up fabric dyes, permanent stains, and chemical compounds that bond with synthetic materials. I was not looking for anything dangerous or harmful. I was looking for something that would leave a lasting, visible reminder of Karen's crimes. My research led me to a fascinating discovery. There are special polymer compounds used in textile manufacturing that create permanent bonds with synthetic fabrics when activated by specific conditions. These compounds are completely safe for skin contact, but create irreversible color changes in polyester, nylon, and other synthetic materials. I found a specialty chemical supplier that sold a product called Fabric Bond Plus. According to the technical specifications, this clear liquid could be mixed with food coloring to create a solution that would permanently stain synthetic fabrics when exposed to air after being wet. The staining process was irreversible and would not fade with washing. I ordered a small bottle of the compound along with several bottles of bright food coloring in red, blue, green, and yellow. The total cost was less than $60, a fraction of what Karen's lock requirement had cost me. When the package arrived, I spent an evening in my garage testing the mixture on old clothes. I soaked pieces of polyester fabric in a solution of the compound mixed with food coloring, then hung them up to dry. Within an hour, brilliant permanent stains appeared on the fabric that would not wash out no matter how much soap and hot water I used. The beauty of the solution was its delayed activation. The compound remained completely invisible in water but created permanent stains only when wet fabric was exposed to air and began to dry. Someone could swim in treated water for hours without knowing anything was wrong until they got out and their clothes began to dry. My timing had to be perfect. Through careful observation and overheard neighborhood conversations, I learned that Karen was planning another pool party for the following Saturday afternoon. Several HOA board members were planning to attend, along with their families. Karen had replaced my broken lock with one of her own, but she did not know that I had kept one of the original keys from my expensive lock purchase. Her new lock was identical to the one she had forced me to buy, and my key fit perfectly. Friday night, after dark, I prepared my special mixture. I combined the Fabric Bond Plus with generous amounts of red, blue, green, and yellow food coloring. The result was a rainbow-colored solution that would create spectacular permanent stains on any synthetic fabric. The pool circulation system made distribution easy. I added the mixture to the main filter intake, and the powerful pump spread it evenly throughout the entire pool. The compound dissolved completely, leaving the water looking exactly as it had before. Even the pool lights showed no change in water color or clarity. I tested the water temperature and chemical balance to make sure everything appeared normal. I adjusted the circulation timer to ensure the mixture would be fully distributed by morning. Then I retired to my house and waited. Saturday morning, I watched through my security cameras as Karen arrived early to prepare for her unauthorized pool party. She tested the water with her hand, apparently satisfied that everything was normal. She arranged the deck furniture and set up speakers for music. By noon, the other guests began arriving. I recognized several HOA board members and their families. They brought coolers, pool toys, and attitudes of complete entitlement. Karen greeted them like the host of her own pool party, directing them to changing areas and explaining where they could find towels and drinks. I positioned myself at my kitchen window with my phone, ready to record everything that was about to happen. The security cameras would capture the wide shots, but I wanted close-up footage of the moment these trespassers realized their mistake. Karen and her friends spent 2 hours swimming, lounging, and enjoying my pool facilities. Children splashed in the deep end while adults floated on rafts and shared drinks from my outdoor refrigerator. They were having the time of their lives, completely unaware that every moment in the water was sealing their fate. As the afternoon grew later and people began getting out of the pool to dry off, I held my breath and waited for the chemistry to work its magic. The Fabric Bond Plus needed time to activate, but when it did, the results would be spectacular. Karen was about to learn that some stains never come out. At 3:15 in the afternoon, Karen's pool party was in full swing. 8 adults and 4 children were enjoying my stolen paradise, completely unaware that they were swimming in their own downfall. I watched through my kitchen window as they lounged on my furniture and helped themselves to drinks from my refrigerator. The first person to get out of the pool was Tom Henderson, the HOA board member who had helped Karen with her previous break-in. He climbed out of the deep end and grabbed a towel from my deck chair. At first, nothing seemed unusual. He dried his face and arms normally. But as his swim trunks began to air dry in the afternoon sun, something magical started to happen. Small patches of bright blue color began appearing on the fabric. At first, Tom did not notice the staining. He was busy talking to another board member about neighborhood business. Then Tom's wife Susan got out of the pool wearing a white cover-up over her swimsuit. Within 10 minutes, brilliant red and yellow stains began blooming across the fabric like flowers opening in fast forward. The stains were not subtle. They were bright, obvious, and spreading quickly as the fabric dried. Susan noticed the stains first. She looked down at her cover-up in confusion and called Tom over to examine the strange discoloration. They both stared at the growing stains like they were witnessing some kind of magic trick. By this time, other pool party guests were getting out of the water and toweling off. A woman named Patricia, who served as the HOA secretary, emerged from the pool wearing an expensive-looking swimsuit. Bright green stains began appearing across her chest and back as the synthetic fabric dried. The children were the most dramatic victims. Their colorful swim clothes turned into rainbow disasters as multiple colors activated simultaneously. A young boy's swim trunks developed purple and orange patches, while his sister's swimsuit became covered in swirls of pink and blue. Panic set in quickly once people realized the stains were not washing off with pool water. Tom tried dunking his swim trunks back in the pool, but the stains had already bonded permanently with the fabric. Susan scrubbed frantically at her cover-up with a wet towel, but the red and yellow marks only seemed to get brighter. Karen, still floating in the pool on one of my rafts, began shouting orders to her panicking guests. She demanded to know what was happening and why everyone's clothes were changing colors. But as she climbed out of the pool herself, her own expensive designer bathing suit began its transformation. Karen's black one-piece swimsuit developed spectacular rainbow stains across the front and back. Bright streaks of red, blue, green, and yellow created abstract patterns that looked like modern art. Her matching cover-up turned into a tie-dye disaster that would have been fashionable in the 1970s. The beautiful sight of Karen standing in my backyard, covered head to toe in permanent rainbow stains, was worth every moment of planning and preparation. She frantically tried to wash the stains out with pool water, but the Fabric Bond Plus had already done its work. Those colors were permanent. Within minutes, Karen's pool party had turned into a panicked retreat. Parents grabbed their stained children and rushed toward the exit. Board members tried to hide their rainbow swimwear under towels and shirts. Everyone was talking at once, demanding explanations and solutions that Karen could not provide. Karen herself was the most frantic of all. Her expensive designer swimwear was ruined beyond repair, and she knew she would have to walk through the neighborhood wearing the evidence of her trespassing. She tried organizing a group effort to clean the stains, but everyone was too busy trying to save their own clothes. The exodus from my backyard looked like a rainbow-colored parade of shame. Karen and her accomplices had to walk through the neighborhood wearing permanent proof of their crimes. Children pointed and stared. Neighbors came out of their houses to see what was happening. I watched from my window as Karen tried to maintain her dignity while wearing a swimsuit that looked like it had been attacked by a paint gun. She kept pulling her cover-up tighter around her body, but the stains were too bright and extensive to hide. The best part was knowing that these stains would never come out. Every time Karen looked in her closet, she would see the rainbow swimsuit that reminded her of the day she learned that actions have consequences. Every time the other board members got dressed, they would remember the price of supporting someone who abuses their authority. As the last of the trespassers disappeared down the street, I felt a deep satisfaction that I had not experienced since before this whole ordeal began. Justice had been served in the most visible way possible. Karen and her friends were now wearing the evidence of their crimes for everyone to see. My pool was finally secure, and my property had been reclaimed through the power of chemistry and perfect timing. The aftermath of Karen's rainbow pool party was everything I had hoped for and more. Within hours, photos and videos of the stained trespassers were spreading through neighborhood social media groups like wildfire. Someone had captured Karen's walk of shame on their phone, and the footage went viral on the local Facebook groups. The images were spectacular. Karen walking down Maple Street wearing a rainbow tie-dye swimsuit that she had not chosen. Tom Henderson trying to hide his bright blue swim trunks under a towel that was too small. Children crying about their ruined swimwear while parents frantically tried to explain what had happened. But the social media storm was just the beginning. The permanent stains meant that Karen and her accomplices had to face the consequences of their actions every single day. They could not hide what they had done or pretend it never happened. Karen tried to file new complaints against me with the HOA board, claiming I had somehow sabotaged my own pool to harm innocent people. But the board members who had been stained alongside her were not interested in pursuing her accusations. They had bigger problems to worry about, like explaining to their spouses why their expensive swimwear was permanently ruined. The police were equally uninterested in Karen's claims. When she demanded they investigate me for property damage, the same desk sergeant who had dismissed my trespassing complaint asked her why she had been on my property in the first place. Karen's story about emergency access rights sounded even less believable when she was wearing rainbow-stained evidence of her pool party. My lawyer called the situation poetic justice and advised Karen through her attorney that any legal action against me would result in counter-suits for trespassing, breaking and entering, and property damage. The security footage I had saved would make those cases very easy to win. But the most satisfying part was watching Karen's authority crumble in real time. Neighbors who had previously supported her leadership began asking uncomfortable questions about her behavior. People started sharing their own stories about Karen's overreach and bullying tactics. The HOA board held an emergency meeting to address the situation. By this time, even Karen's closest allies had distanced themselves from her. The meeting minutes, which were public record, showed a unanimous vote of no confidence in Karen's leadership. Karen resigned from the HOA board 3 weeks after her rainbow pool party. Her resignation letter, copied to every homeowner in the neighborhood, blamed me for creating a hostile environment and making her position untenable. She claimed to be the victim of a vindictive neighbor who had booby-trapped his own property. But everyone had seen the security footage by then. Everyone knew that Karen had been trespassing on my property, using my pool without permission, and cutting locks that she had forced me to install. Her resignation letter only made her look more desperate and delusional. 6 months later, Karen put her house up for sale. The for sale sign in her front yard felt like the final victory in our neighborhood war. She could not face the daily reminders of her humiliation, and she could not rebuild her reputation after being exposed so completely. My pool became a symbol of successful resistance against HOA tyranny. Neighbors would walk by and give me thumbs up or share their own stories about standing up to authority figures. The security cameras stayed up, and nobody complained about them anymore. On quiet evenings, I float in my crystal-clear pool and think about the lessons learned during those difficult months. Sometimes the system fails you. Sometimes the authorities will not help. Sometimes you have to create your own justice. Karen learned that actions have consequences, and those consequences sometimes come in bright, permanent colors that never wash out. My pool remains secure, my property is respected, and my sanctuary is finally at peace. The rainbow stains have faded from my memory, but I hope they never fade from Karen's closet.